My name is Jennifer, and I need to tell you something that most people would take to their grave. The day my husband Marcus left me in a hospital bed in Austin, Texas, the doctors said I would walk again. But what they didn't warn me about, what nobody tells you about when your entire world collapses in a single moment, was the devastation that happens while you're lying there completely helpless, unable to move, unable to protect what's yours. I was 28 years old, lying in Brackenridge Hospital with a spinal cord injury from a car accident that Marcus caused. Yes, you heard that right. The man who promised to love me in sickness and in health was the one behind the wheel that August evening when everything changed. He had been texting while driving, his eyes on his phone instead of the road, when we hit that bridge support at 60 miles per hour. I woke up 4 days later unable to feel anything below my waist. Marcus came to see me exactly twice. The second time, he looked at me like I was already a ghost, already gone from this world, and he said 6 words that I will never forget. I can't be married to a cripple. Then he turned and walked out of my hospital room, his phone already pressed to his ear, already calling someone else. And I didn't find out until 3 weeks later that while I was learning to accept my new reality, while I was going through physical therapy at Shirley Moore Rehabilitation Center, while I was crying myself to sleep because I couldn't feel my legs anymore, Marcus was spending time with someone who made him feel alive. Someone named Rebecca, my best friend of 15 years. The woman who had been standing beside my hospital bed just days earlier, holding my hand, promising me everything would be okay, all while her other hand was wrapped around my husband's in the parking lot where nobody could see. I won't lie to you. Lying there paralyzed, watching the ceiling tiles blur together through my tears, I felt something I had never felt before in my life. It wasn't just betrayal. It was annihilation. It was being erased. My 2 children, Sophie and David, ages 8 and 6, came to visit me, and Sophie asked the question that broke me completely. "Mommy, why isn't Daddy here? Did you do something bad?" That question haunted me. In her young mind, she was trying to make sense of why her father had abandoned us, and the only explanation she could construct was that I must have failed him somehow. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw things. I wanted to call Marcus and demand answers, but my hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. The nurses at the hospital kept telling me that my attitude would determine my recovery, that I needed to stay positive, that people overcome these things every single day. But what they didn't understand was that I wasn't just fighting paralysis. I was fighting despair. I was fighting the knowledge that the man I had loved since college, the man I had built a life with, had decided I was disposable. My parents flew in from Nashville, Tennessee, and my mother's face when she saw me, when she realized her daughter's life had been shattered, that look will stay with me forever. She sat beside my bed and she cried, and she whispered something that I didn't understand at first. "We're going to fight this, Jennifer. All of it. Not just the injury. All of it." 3 weeks into my hospitalization, something shifted inside me. It wasn't healing. It wasn't acceptance. It was something sharper. It was clarity. It was the moment I realized that while I had been focused on my own pain, there were other things happening in my life that required my attention. My financial advisor, a woman named Patricia Chun from Wells Fargo in downtown Austin, had called to check on me. A courtesy call, she said, but during that call, she mentioned something odd. She asked if I had authorized a large withdrawal from our joint savings account. A withdrawal of $47,000. My hands started shaking. Not from fear. From something else entirely. 3 weeks after he left, Marcus came back. He walked into my hospital room on a Friday afternoon like he was returning from a business trip, like nothing had happened, like he hadn't spent the last 21 days liquidating our assets and planning his new life with my former best friend. He brought flowers, white roses, my favorite, and he had rehearsed an apology that sounded like something from a television show. "Jennifer, I was scared," he said, and his voice was soft and contrite. "I was terrified of losing you, and I reacted badly. I said things I didn't mean. The stress of the accident, I wasn't thinking clearly." He reached for my hand, and I let him take it. I let him think that he had won, that his charm and his flowers and his carefully constructed narrative had worked. He didn't know that David Hutchinson and Patricia Chun and I had spent the last 2 weeks documenting everything. He didn't know that I had called the Internal Revenue Service about the business account. He didn't know that his mother in Charlotte, North Carolina, had already been contacted by our lawyer regarding her role in helping him open a property in Raleigh under a shell corporation. Most importantly, he didn't know that I had already hired a private investigator named Thomas Wade who had documented, with photographs, every single time he and Rebecca had met at the Motel 6 outside Austin on I-35. 14 times in 3 weeks. And then Marcus made a critical mistake. He asked me how I was feeling financially, whether I was worried about medical bills, whether I needed anything from him. The question was designed to seem caring. It was actually an admission. He was testing to see if I had noticed the missing money. And when I told him that I was fine, that my family and my lawyer were taking care of everything, I watched his face change. I watched the realization dawn on him that something was wrong, that he had underestimated me, that the woman lying in that hospital bed was not the same Jennifer he had abandoned 3 weeks earlier. The divorce papers were served to Marcus on September 15th at his workplace. He called me immediately, his voice rising, demanding to know what I was doing, telling me I was making a mistake, insisting that we could work through this. I let him talk. I didn't interrupt. And when he finally ran out of words, I told him the truth. I'm going to make sure you never hurt anyone the way you've hurt me and our children. And I'm going to do it legally, methodically, and completely. The discovery process was brutal for him. Every transaction was documented. Every lie was exposed. The property in San Antonio that he had purchased with Rebecca was seized and liquidated to cover my medical expenses and ongoing care. The Tesla stock he had hidden in accounts under his mother's name, discovered and transferred. The business he was starting with Rebecca, which was just a money laundering scheme designed to hide income from child support, shut down and investigated by the state of Texas. But the most devastating discovery came when we found out that Marcus had been planning this for months. He had consulted with an accountant, a man named Robert Tashman from a firm in Dallas, about how to hide assets before the accident even happened. The accountant had warned him it was illegal. Marcus had done it anyway. This was premeditation. This was calculated. This wasn't a man who had been scared or confused. This was a man who had been planning his escape route while his wife was still in a wedding dress. On October 3rd, I underwent my first surgery to stabilize my spine. On October 4th, Marcus's attorney filed a counterclaim, accusing me of emotional abuse and claiming that I had caused the accident by distracting him while he drove. The desperation in that filing told me everything. He was losing. The machinery of the court system, once engaged, doesn't move backward. It crushes forward. And it was crushing him, but the money was never really the point, though I need you to understand that fighting back in court is expensive. My legal fees reached $234,000. My ongoing medical care, physical therapy, medications, equipment modifications to my home, that's going to run into the millions over my lifetime. So yes, the money mattered. The assets that Marcus had tried to hide, the resources that should have gone to my children's education and my own recovery, those things mattered. But what mattered more was something he couldn't steal, couldn't hide, couldn't liquidate. What mattered was showing my children that when someone tries to erase you, when someone tries to pretend you don't exist, you don't just disappear. You fight back. I started recording videos during my recovery, physical therapy sessions, moments of breakthrough, when I could move something that had been paralyzed before. On November 12th, I moved my right foot for the first time in more than 2 months. It was a millimeter of movement, barely perceptible to anyone but me and the physical therapist, but it felt like winning. I posted that moment on Instagram. I gained 500 followers that day. People started messaging me. Women who had been abandoned by partners. Men who had felt powerless in their own lives. People who understood betrayal. People who understood the difference between giving up and fighting back. Sophie and David started coming to my physical therapy sessions. They saw their mother working, pushing, refusing to give up. They saw that defeat was a choice, not a destiny. And they learned something that I think every child should learn. Sometimes the people you love will hurt you, and sometimes the only way to heal is to refuse to become small. To refuse to disappear. On December 1st, the judge in the case of Jennifer Morrison versus Marcus and Rebecca Thompson, case number 2024, CV 45821 in Travis County District Court, issued a preliminary ruling that froze all assets and ordered Marcus to pay $5,000 a month in temporary spousal support while the case proceeded to trial. By December, I had received 20,000 messages. People wanted to know how I had done it, how I had fought back, how I had somehow, from a hospital bed, brought down someone who seemed untouchable. That's when my mother said something that shifted everything again. You should tell this story properly. Not just posts. A real story. A platform. People need to hear this. I had been thinking about starting a YouTube channel for months. Other creators with mobility disabilities were building audiences. People were hungry for authentic stories about survival, about fighting back, about justice that wasn't simple or neat or resolved in 90 minutes. I started researching. I learned about retention metrics, about what kept viewers watching, about how to structure a narrative so that people couldn't look away. I studied creators like Tana Mongeau and storytime creators who built massive audiences by being vulnerable, by putting their actual lives on the screen. And I realized something. I had a story that mattered. Not because it was special, but because it was true. On January 8th, 2025, I uploaded my first video. It was just me in my home office in my wheelchair, talking directly to the camera about the day my husband left me. I didn't edit out my tears. I didn't pretend it was easy. I just told the truth. Within 24 hours, it had 50,000 views. Within a week, it had 500,000. Within a month, 3 million. I was monetized. I had sponsorship offers. I had production companies asking if they could turn my story into a documentary. I had book publishers reaching out. And I had something that Marcus, despite everything he had taken, could never take away: a voice, a platform, an audience that believed me, that supported me, that understood why I had fought so hard. The trial happened on April 12th, 2024. I testified from my wheelchair. I described, in detail, the night of the accident, the hospital visits, the moment Marcus told me he couldn't be married to a disabled person, the discovery of the hidden accounts, the photographs of him with Rebecca. I was cross-examined by his attorney. She tried to paint me as bitter, as motivated by revenge, as a woman scorned trying to destroy her ex-husband out of spite. And then David Hutchinson showed the court the timeline. The accountant consultation 3 months before the accident. The hidden accounts. The property purchase. The business incorporation. He showed the judge that this wasn't a man who had been scared and reacted badly. This was a man who had been planning his exit strategy before his wife was even injured. The judge's ruling was swift and devastating for Marcus. He was ordered to pay $350,000 in back spousal support. He was ordered to pay 80% of my medical expenses. He was ordered to pay child support of $2,000 a month until both children turned 18. The property in San Antonio was transferred to me. The stock accounts were liquidated and frozen. And the judge, in her written decision, included a section about Marcus's behavior that noted, the respondent's actions demonstrate a calculated and premeditated scheme to defraud the petitioner during a period of extreme vulnerability and incapacity. This court finds that punitive damages in the amount of $100,000 are appropriate. Rebecca was named as a co-conspirator in the fraud scheme, and she was ordered to repay $140,000 that she had received through the business account. Her real estate license was suspended pending further investigation. Marcus appealed. The appeal was denied on July 8th. The court's decision was upheld. By that point, my YouTube channel had 2.3 million subscribers. I was being recognized in restaurants in Austin. Brands wanted to partner with me. I had been interviewed by every major podcast in the true crime and personal development spaces. I had been featured in Harper's Bazaar, in People magazine, in Forbes under their 30 Under 30 list. I had been asked to speak at universities about domestic financial abuse and legal protection. And I was still receiving messages every single day from people whose lives had been changed by my story. What people don't understand about recovery is that it's not linear. My legs still don't work. I still wake up some mornings and cry because I can't feel my feet touching the ground. I still have physical therapy sessions that are painful and exhausting. I still have days when I look at my children and I'm overwhelmed with guilt, knowing that their childhood has been marked by trauma that they didn't deserve. But I also wake up some mornings and I think about the 28-year-old woman who is lying in a hospital bed completely helpless, and I realize that she wouldn't recognize the woman I've become. I'm stronger now. Not in my legs, they're still paralyzed, but in every other way. I'm financially independent. I'm building wealth. I'm using my platform to help other people who have been abused, abandoned, or exploited. I've created a legal aid foundation that provides free consultations to people who can't afford lawyers. It's already helped 97 families. I've partnered with the National Coalition for the Homeless to provide resources for people with disabilities who have been abandoned by partners. I've written a book called Paralyzed but Powerful that's been on the New York Times bestseller list for 18 weeks. And most importantly, I've shown Sophie and David that when you're pushed down, when you're left for dead, when someone tries to erase you, you don't accept it. You fight back. You use every tool available to you. You document everything. You find lawyers. You build your case. You stay calm and methodical and patient. And eventually, the machinery of justice catches up with the people who tried to destroy you. Marcus is still paying me. He will be for years. Rebecca's career is essentially over. The accountant who helped them hide assets is facing criminal charges. The shell corporations are being dissolved. The scheme that seemed so perfect, so foolproof, fell apart because I refused to give up. Because I refused to disappear. Because I documented everything and trusted the process and used my voice when I got it back. What I didn't anticipate was how my story would affect other people. I didn't realize that there were millions of people watching who had experienced similar betrayals. Women whose husbands had left them while they were pregnant. Men whose wives had hidden assets during divorce proceedings. People who had been gaslit and manipulated and made to feel crazy by partners who claimed to love them. I started getting messages from women in Dallas, in Houston, in San Antonio, women who had been inspired by my story to finally leave abusive situations. I got a message from a man in Nebraska whose ex-wife had hidden $2 million in cryptocurrency, and he was able to track it down using the same investigative techniques I had documented in my videos. I got a message from a teenager in Florida whose parents were going through a divorce, and she had watched my channel and learned how to protect herself financially. One woman in Michigan told me that my story had literally saved her life, not metaphorically, but literally, because she had been planning to take her own life after her husband abandoned her, and watching my channel had given her a reason to keep fighting. That message made me cry for an hour. It made me understand that what I had been through, as devastating as it was, could have meaning beyond my own survival, could have value beyond my own vindication. I started using my platform differently after that. I didn't just tell my story. I started teaching. I created a masterclass on financial protection in marriage. I partnered with legal experts to create downloadable templates for financial documentation. I created a resource guide that's been downloaded more than 500,000 times. And I started receiving offers that I had never anticipated. Netflix contacted me about a limited series. Audible wanted me to record my audiobook. Speaking engagements started pouring in universities, corporate events, women's conferences. The TED Talk invitation came in November of 2024. I gave that talk to a full house in Portland, Oregon, and I talked about how disability, betrayal, and determination can intersect to create something powerful. That talk has been viewed more than 12 million times on YouTube. Something unexpected happened with my case that caught the attention of legal scholars. Because Marcus had admitted to planning his asset hiding scheme before the accident, because the timeline was so clear, the premeditation so obvious, the case became precedent in Texas. Lawyers started citing it in their own cases. Jennifer Morrison versus Marcus Thompson established that pre-planning of financial fraud, even if the triggering event occurs afterward, can be prosecuted as intentional misconduct. I've seen written in court documents. The judge who ruled on my case was interviewed by the Texas Bar Journal about the decision. She discussed how technology, documentation, and systematic investigation had changed family law. She said, This case demonstrates the importance of digital forensics and financial transparency in protecting vulnerable people during medical emergencies. My lawyer, David Hutchinson, expanded his practice based on the publicity for my case. He now specializes in exactly this kind of abuse. He's helped 73 other people. Some of them are men. Some of them are women. All of them have experienced similar patterns of betrayal and financial manipulation. He sends me Christmas cards every year. In the card from 2024, he wrote, "Thank you for trusting me with your case. Your determination made me a better lawyer." But the legal consequences didn't stop with the civil case. The criminal investigation into Robert Tashman, the accountant who had helped Marcus hide assets, resulted in felony charges. He was convicted on August 2, 2024, of conspiracy to commit fraud. He's currently serving 2 years in federal prison. The shell corporations that had been created as part of the scheme were dissolved, and the money that had been hiding in them was seized and distributed. Some of it went to me. Some of it went to other creditors. But knowing that the criminal system had caught up with the people who had tried to destroy my life, that mattered. That mattered more than I can articulate. What I didn't expect was to receive a letter from Marcus. It arrived at my home in Austin in March of 2025, forwarded through my lawyer because he knew I wouldn't open it directly from him. I was skeptical. I assumed it would be more manipulation, more attempts to convince me that I was wrong, that I was bitter, that I was the villain in this story. But instead, it was something else entirely. He wrote, "Jennifer, I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. What I did was inexcusable. I was a coward, and I punished you for something that was my fault, my negligence, my texting, my fault that you're paralyzed. And instead of being honest about that, instead of facing what I had done, I tried to run away. I tried to make it your problem instead of my own." I've been in therapy now for nearly a year. My therapist helped me understand that I was terrified of weakness, terrified of disability, terrified of the idea that I might have to take care of someone who couldn't take care of themselves. And rather than face that fear, I destroyed everything. I destroyed you. I destroyed our marriage. I destroyed my relationship with our children, who barely speak to me now. I destroyed my own life. You didn't do that to me. I did it to myself. I'm writing this because I want you to know that I understand what I did. I understand how unforgivable it is. And I want you to know that I see you now, not as the disabled woman I couldn't be married to, but as the powerful, resilient, extraordinary human being that you have become. I'm paying the child support. I'm paying the spousal support. And I'm going to keep paying it for as long as the law requires it, not because I have to, but because it's the right thing to do. I'm going to therapy. I'm trying to be a better father to Sophie and David, though I understand that I've damaged that relationship in ways that may never heal. I'm acknowledging what I did. I'm facing it. And I'm sorry. I'm profoundly, completely sorry. I read that letter 3 times. I cried. And then I did something that surprised me. I saved it. I didn't delete it. I didn't burn it. I filed it away. Because I realized that forgiveness isn't about pretending someone didn't hurt you. It's not about reconciliation or friendship or even basic respect. Forgiveness is about releasing the hold that anger has on your own soul. And that letter, whatever my feelings about Marcus's sincerity, was evidence that at some level, the message had gotten through. That actions have consequences. That betrayal echoes. That you can't hurt people and expect the universe not to notice. By the end of 2024, Olive Revenge Stories had reached 5 million subscribers. I had become something that I never anticipated. A voice for people who had been silenced, abandoned, and betrayed. But with that platform came responsibility. I started being very careful about how I told stories. I made sure to work with legal professionals before publishing anything. I created a fact-checking process. I interviewed the people in the stories whenever possible. Because I understood that just because something feels true to me, just because I had lived through something, didn't mean I could present it without nuance and accuracy. I started receiving stories from viewers. Real stories. Stories of women whose husbands had hidden money. Stories of men whose ex-partners had tried to take their children. Stories of people who had been abused in ways that went far beyond what I had experienced. And I created a second channel specifically for these stories, stories that weren't my own but belonged to the community. We've featured 47 stories so far, 47 families. And in 11 of those cases, the legal outcome changed because the story was told, because evidence was preserved, because someone watching recognized something that could help. A woman in Colorado watched one of the featured stories and realized that her neighbor was experiencing the same kind of financial abuse. She reported it to authorities. That neighbor is now safe, away from her abuser, and rebuilding her life. A man in Michigan recognized his own situation in another story and reached out to my legal team for guidance. He's now in the process of getting full custody of his children after his ex-wife's manipulations were exposed. These aren't abstract numbers to me. These are real people, real families, real lives that have been changed because a platform exists to tell these stories. And that platform only exists because I refuse to be silent, because I refuse to disappear, because a woman in a wheelchair decided that if she couldn't walk, she could at least fight. 5 months ago, something happened that the doctors said might happen eventually. During physical therapy, I felt something in my right foot. It wasn't pain. It wasn't a full sensation. But it was something. My physical therapist, a man named Raymond Park from the Austin Medical Center, said it was evidence of nerve regeneration. It's slow. It's possibly temporary. But it's progress. I've been doing new treatments, stem cell therapy, experimental medications, physical therapy protocols that weren't available 5 years ago. None of it is guaranteed to restore full function. But all of it is helping. A little bit each day, a little bit each week, my body is reclaiming sensation that I thought was lost forever. And I'm documenting it. I'm showing people that recovery isn't just about fighting in court. It's about fighting in your body. It's about refusing to accept the diagnosis, the prognosis, the limitations that people place on you. Sophie is now 14. David is 12. They're both taking honors classes in school. They're both in therapy, processing what happened to their family. And they're both proud of their mother in ways that I don't think they fully understand yet, but that I believe they will understand more deeply as they get older. I'm dating again. I never thought that would happen. I thought that my paralysis, combined with the betrayal I had experienced, would make me untouchable. But I met someone, a man named Christopher, who is a physical therapist who sees me not as a disability but as a person, and we've been building something real together. He's not trying to fix me. He's not treating me like I'm broken. He's just treating me like a person he cares about. And that's revolutionary to me. That's the kind of healing that goes deeper than physical therapy. Looking back on everything, I realized that my story isn't really about Marcus or Rebecca or financial abuse or even disability. It's about the difference between giving up and fighting back. It's about the difference between accepting a narrative that someone else has written for you and taking control of your own story. It's about documentation, persistence, and the absolute necessity of having a support system that believes in you when you don't believe in yourself. I've become an advocate for financial literacy in marriage. I teach couples, even happy couples who aren't in crisis, about the importance of transparency, separate accounts, and understanding where your money is going. Because financial abuse is often the precursor to other forms of abuse. And understanding your own finances is the first line of defense against exploitation. I've also become an advocate for digital privacy and documentation. I teach people how to preserve evidence safely, how to use technology to protect themselves, how to create records that will hold up in court. Because the tools that Marcus used to try to hide his crime, digital transfers, shell corporations, hidden accounts, those same tools can be used to expose crime. And knowledge is power. I've spoken at the American Bar Association about modernizing family law to address digital assets. I've consulted with the Texas State Bar about creating better resources for people experiencing financial abuse. I've worked with the National Domestic Violence Hotline to expand their offerings around financial protection. And I'm writing a second book now about the legal and practical steps that people can take to protect themselves financially, even within a marriage. Because I learned, the hard way, that love and trust are not sufficient safeguards. Documentation and legal protection are necessary. And understanding that doesn't make you cynical. It makes you safe. If you're still watching this, if you've stayed with me through the entire story, I want you to know something. I want you to know that whatever you're facing right now, whatever betrayal, whatever limitation, whatever circumstance has been imposed on you, you have options. You have power. You might not feel it. You might be lying in a hospital bed, paralyzed, abandoned, broken. But you have power. It might be the power to document. It might be the power to reach out to someone. It might be the power to tell your truth. And sometimes, that's enough to change everything. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a financial advisor. I'm not a therapist. I'm just a woman from Austin, Texas, who got knocked down and decided not to stay down. I'm a woman whose husband tried to erase her and who responded by making herself impossible to ignore. I'm a woman whose disability was supposed to be the end of her story and who decided that it was actually just a plot twist. My mother was wrong when she said I wouldn't reach 1,000 subscribers. But she was right about one thing. She said we need to fight. And that's what I've been doing. Every day. In every way possible. And I want to extend an invitation to you. If you're experiencing financial abuse, if you're being betrayed, if you're being gaslit, if you're being told that you're less than, that you're broken, that you're disposable, come to Olive Revenge Stories. Tell us your story. Let us help you document it. Let us help you understand your legal options. Let us remind you that you have power, that you matter, that your life is not over. It's just beginning. Because justice might not be quick. Justice might not be loud. Justice might not look the way you expect it to look. But if you're willing to fight for it, if you're willing to be patient and methodical and strategic, justice will come. The court system exists for a reason. Laws exist for a reason. And you have the right to use them. You have the right to protect yourself. You have the right to fight back. And you have the right to tell your story. So, thank you for listening to mine. Now go tell yours. If you're listening right now, please subscribe to Olive Revenge Stories. Share this video. Send me your story. Because together, we're going to make sure that betrayal doesn't win. That abuse doesn't get the final word. That the people who try to destroy us are held accountable. And that justice, real, lasting legal justice, is served. I'm Jennifer. And I'm still standing. Even if I have to do it from a wheelchair.